Demonstration nugget using the REST API. Hello everybody, this is Ben Finkel, and in this nugget we're going to take a look at how you can use the RESTful API that Google exposes in order to administer your Google Cloud SQL instances. Now this can be a daunting thing at first, particularly if you're not used to working with REST APIs, but don't worry, we're going to take a slow walk through it and you can understand exactly how it works. No doubt, the most difficult part about using the REST API with Google is getting your head around the OAuth 2.0 authorization flow. And this is all about allowing a third-party app that, say, you've written to access or perform administrative work on Google servers. So you're probably actually familiar with OAuth 2.0 even if you didn't know that you were using it. Think about when you try to set up an application that wants to use your Facebook or Twitter account for you, right? The first thing that application does is says, hey, I need to post to Twitter on your behalf. And you say, okay. And then Twitter opens up a page and says, hey, this application wants to tweet on your behalf. Is that okay? And you click, yes, it's okay. And then that application goes ahead and does things on Twitter for you. Well, that was OAuth 2.0. That's what was happening there. And the basic process works like this. In this example, your app, or whatever third-party app we're talking about, requests a token from the service that it wants to use on your behalf. In our case, it's going to be Google servers, Google Cloud SQL. Now, Cloud SQL then presents a screen to you, the user, and you have to click yes, this app is allowed to use this product on my behalf. And at that point, an authorization code is sent back to the application. So now the application has this authorization code, and at any point in the future, there's a little time break here. At any point in the future, that application can submit that authorization code back up to Google Cloud SQL, and it can say, hey, I'd like to do some more work in Google Cloud SQL on behalf of, Ben Finkel. Can I do that? Google Cloud SQL makes sure that Ben Finkel has not revoked that access, because you can always revoke access after you've granted it. And if you have not revoked that access, then the exchange happens and you get an access token. This is one of the places that really confuses people. The authorization token and the access token. They both begin with A, but they're two different things. The access token is then what the application uses whenever it wants to do some actual work. So authorization is what it passes up in order to be granted an access token. The access token gets sent along with the command itself. Take a look at this example. If I pop up my documentation here, and I'm just going to scroll down to one particular example here. All right, perfect. So here you see the curl command, which is just a command line operation to pass up a URL. And if you take a look at what it's doing, it is calling a project tiers. So it's listing the tiers based on what the based on the project that you're using. But up here in the header, you had to pass in an access token, a bearer access token. So this command doesn't work unless you have that access token to pass up along with it. That's how you get access to the resource, is with the access token. And you get that access token by performing this little exchange with the authorization token. Now, you can get this working in any programming language, even from command line with a bash shell script. It's a little bit confusing. If you go ahead and search around on the internet, you'll find plenty of examples. Google really recommends that you use a third-party, well-tested, well-documented library to perform this OAuth flow, to do the back and forth and get a hold of your access tokens and store your access tokens. And the reason for that is because, hey, this is a security issue. You could roll your own, without a doubt, but you know what? It's better to take advantage of the work that someone else has already done, and you know it's going to be a little more secure and a little less vulnerable to any kind of attack. But certainly you can do this yourself. We're going to do neither of those things. We are going to use some of the built-in tools that Google has for us. Take a look at this. So first things first, I'm going to open up something called the OAuth Playground inside of Google. This is a pretty sweet little utility that's going to walk us through the exchange and authorization process that we just talked about. You can kind of see it happen step by step. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to say, hey, who's actually going to be requesting access? Because I'm going to need to whitelist that person here, or inside of my my developer console. So I'm going to come over here to the configuration option, and I'm going to select use my own OAuth credentials. Now, a couple things. I need a client ID and a client secret, so I have to be able to identify who this client is. We're setting up the third-party app right now from the left-hand side of the equation, and I get the client ID and the client secret from my Cloud Console. Go to cloud.google.com, go to my console, and get to my GSQL Nuggets project here, and I'm going to go right to credentials on APIs and auth on the left-hand side, and I'm going to create a new OAuth ID. So this is important. In order for this whole process to work, you're going to have to whitelist specific applications that can access your Google Cloud SQL product. And in this case, I'm going to whitelist a web application. Now, if I noticed over here, it said I need to use this URL as a valid redirect URI. So I got to make sure I set that up inside of my authorized redirects URI here. And I'm also going to set developers.google.com as an authorized JavaScript origin. So this is just security things. Make sure that everything is on the up and up when this request for access comes in. Click Create Client ID. It's going to take a moment. And now my project, Google Cloud SQL, is going to be aware of this particular client. I can make the OAuth Playground pretend to be or spoof itself as this client. And I need both the client ID and the client secret. That's basically a username and a password. So now the OAuth Playground is going to look like that particular user that I have granted access to, or I have said is able to request access at least, inside of the developer console. Come down here to select my API that I want to authorize. You can see there's a lot of them. Specifically, we're interested in SQL administration, the SQL service.admin scope. Click Authorize APIs, and you can see the first thing that happens is it's saying, hey, GSQL Nugget, that's who my OAuth Playground is spoofing, is pretending to be, would like to manage my Google SQL service. This is that little stage in the chart where it's going back to the user, which is me talking to you right now, and asking if this is okay. I'm going to say that it's okay, and now I've got an authorization code, which is an authorization token. They're the same thing, right here inside of my Playground. This is that authorization token that we just talked about. And if I click the Exchange button, now I've got a refresh in an access token. So now I've got that access token. It automatically jumps to the next page here. So now I've got this access token, which is just a big, long, random-looking string that I can use in order to request or perform work against Google Cloud SQL in the name of Ben Finkel. And you can see the important thing about an access token is that it expires after time. By default, in this case, it looks like 3,600 seconds. So you can always refresh it to get a new token with a new timer using the refresh token that's also sent along when you do your authorization exchange. Once I'm down here, I can actually build a request on my API, and I'm going to go ahead back to that example, and I'm just going to copy the same request that we were looking at, paste it in here, and then I'm going to fill in the project ID that I want to hit. Remember, I got to fill in my project ID, not my project name, which is Sunlit Pipe-768. And if I send the request, I got here a list of all my tiers in the response. So this is cool. The OAuth 2.0 Playground allows me to see that OAuth 2 flow and allow me to build this stuff. And what's cool about this token is this is a bearer token. If I go ahead and get this on my clipboard, I can use this in a curl command from the terminal window. Let me show you how that works. I'm going to build my curl command inside of a text editor just so it's easier to see inside of this nugget, and then I'll paste it into my terminal window. And I've gone ahead and copied the example that we were just looking at, listing the project tiers from the Google documentation. I've just got to replace a couple of things on it, right? I've got to replace the access token with that actual string of characters that I cut and pasted out of the OAuth Playground. So I used the Playground to kind of go through that process of requesting and getting the access token. Even though I got it in the OAuth 2.0 Playground, I can use it here in my command line operation because it's a bearer token. Whoever has this token has authorization to do whatever scope was requested when it was initially created. So I've got administrative access to the Google Cloud SQL instance with this token, at least until this token expires, right? And that's why the token has an expiration on it, because if somebody gets a hold of this token, they could perform malicious activities. So typically speaking, you want your tokens to have a rather short expiration time on them. So I also need to replace the project ID here with Sunlit Pipe-768 because that is the ID that I am working with. Go ahead and copy this entire thing onto the clipboard, paste it into my command line, and it should execute just fine. And you can see I got back a list of the tiers in JSON form that are available to my project. So the important takeaway here, you got to get an access token using the OAuth 2.0 flow in order to perform RESTful API calls. One more cool way that you can work with these APIs is to use the Google APIs Explorer. And let me show you that here. I'm going to bring it up in a web browser. It's developers.google.com, whack APIs Explorer. And again, you can look at all the different Google APIs that are out there. There's a ton of them. We're interested in the Cloud SQL Administration API. I select this, and you can see that there's a whole list of SQL.instances, etc. API commands that I could work with. So if I go ahead and find SQLinstances.list, that's one that I like, I'll select this. You see I can fill out just some basic information, like my project ID is going to be Sunlit Pipe 768. Oh, I got to turn on OAuth 2.0. It's got to make sure that I'm allowed to actually do this. So again, I'm authorizing the APIs Explorer to access my project on my behalf. Come down here, click Execute, and you can see I've got both my requests listed. Here is the API request that was made, including the bearer token that was used, as well as down here below I've got the response. So I can see the entire response that came back from this API call. And they have this for all of the RESTful API calls that you can make. Any of them that you want to learn how to use or work with or simply execute from inside the browser, you can do so inside of this APIs Explorer tab. So that concludes this nugget on using the RESTful API with Google Cloud SQL. We took a look at how you can use OAuth 2.0 to generate an access token, and that's really the most complicated part of using the REST API. Generating an access token that your program can submit along with its commands to demonstrate that it's authorized to perform those commands. We also took a look at the OAuth 2.0 playground that Google provides so that you can see how those tokens are exchanged and generated. And we took a look at the APIs Explorer so that you could start to work with and build some RESTful API commands without having to go right down to a command line and run curl operations. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.